Welcome back. This is Mrs. Wright, and today we are going to be working with if functions. So you should have already watched the video on how to create an if function that I did in Prezi, and so now we're actually going to do an example together to help you kind of better understand how we use if functions. So the first thing you should have done is gone to MySPX where you got this video, and on there's also an attachment that has a payroll activity that you will need to download and save to your computer. So the first thing you want to do is you want to save this to your H drive, or excuse me, to your home drive. So I'm going to save it to my folder, save it as payroll. And now we're ready to get started. So what you can see here is this is a payroll document. We have Social Security rate, which is 6.5%. We have our employees that are listed. We have the amount that they get paid per hour, and then how many hours they actually work. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking at gross pay. And if you don't know, gross pay is the amount earned before any deductions. So again, when you have a job, you get a certain amount of money, and after you've been paid that, or after they've taken that amount, you have Social Security and taxes taken out of this. So again, gross pay is before Social Security and taxes. So the way that we calculate this is by multiplying the hours worked by the employee's rate per hour. So the first thing I'm going to do is click in cell E7, and we always start off with our equal sign. And we're going to multiply the hours by the employee's rates. So I'm going to click on D7, the times key, which is your star on your 8 key, and then C7. I'm going to hit enter, and I get $225. And to get the rest of those amounts, I'm going to use the fill handle. We just move over our fill handle square, we click and drag to fill those things in. The next thing we're going to do is calculate Social Security. Social Security tax is calculated by multiplying the gross pay by the Social Security rate, which is stored in cell B3. So what we're going to do first is we're going to start off with the equal sign. We're going to take our gross pay and we're going to multiply this by our Social Security rate, which again is B3. When we hit enter, we get $14.63. Now, this formula is going to work a little bit differently. So I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint. And what you're looking at here is just some different functions that we learned. However, the next thing we want to look at is called relative and absolute copying. So relative copying allows cell references, which you should remember are the locations of a cell, so A5, A6, A7. Allows cell references to change as you fill them down. So when we use the fill handle, it changes based on the row or column that you're filling to. Whereas absolute copying is going to keep the cell reference the same when you fill down. So even though you're filling down to different rows, you're still getting that same cell reference. And we get this by pressing the F4 key. So this is actually an example of where that happens. So we want E7 to change as we go down the rows, but B3 should always stay the same because it's always going to be calculated by that cell. So what we do is we click in between the B and the 3. And again, remember that we hit the F4 key. So we hit F4. It puts dollar signs before the B and after the B, representing the absolute copying. So we hit enter, and now what we'll do is we'll fill down. And if you click on any of these cells, you can see B3 is always staying the same. So that's absolute copying compared to relative copying. The next thing that we want to look at is how taxes are calculated. We're going to multiply gross pay by 15%. So we're going to say equals, we're going to use our gross pay number, we're going to multiply that. 15% can be represented two ways, 0.15, or actually typing in 15 with the percent sign. Either one works. And then I can fill down. And because we used the number there rather than a cell, we don't have to put absolute copying around that. Now, the last thing we're going to do is net pay. And net pay is the amount the employee received after deductions and is calculated by subtracting Social Security and taxes from gross pay. Now, I know we haven't gotten to functions. Stick with me. We're going to get there. We need this information in order to do so. All right, so in this cell, we're going to start off with equals. And again, that is gross pay minus your Social Security minus your taxes. And we hit enter. So if you look at this, this person makes $225, but after taxes and Social Security, they only make $176. So you can see what a big toll taxes and Social Security can take on our pay. But we have to remember that Social Security actually goes, into an account for us when we retire. However, the problem that we see now is, will Social Security still be there when people our age get to be in our retirement? But you can see here again how much these people are making after taxes and Social Security. So what we're going to do is we're going to create an if function using overtime hours. So overtime hours are going to be hours that you work beyond a typical work week. Often employees are paid for overtime hours if they are paid based on an hourly rate. If you get a salary, then you do not get paid overtime. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on column E, and we're going to get the shortcut menu. And on the shortcut menu, we're going to choose insert to insert a new column to the left. Then on cell E5, we're going to type in our name, which is overtime hours, and we'll hit enter there. Now you can't see all of this information, so what we need is we need to wrap text, so it wraps to the next line. So up on your alignment group where you see the wrap text button, click on that, and now you'll see overtime hours appears in 2 lines. I can click and drag that out, and now the E actually slides up with it. Now what we want to do is we want to use an if function to calculate overtime hours. And so I am going to give you a statement. I will always give you a statement when you're creating an if function, and then you will create that formula. So if we're looking at this, if an employee works more than 40 hours overtime, hours are calculated and displayed in the cell. If not, 0 is displayed. Overtime hours are calculated by subtracting the hours, which is stored in cell D7, from 40. If you need to pause this and look at this, please pause and look at it. And then I want you to come back to Excel. So let's go ahead and pause the video, try it out yourself, and then play it back and see if you got it right. Welcome back. So let's go ahead and see how you did. So we're going to look at this. So we always start with an equal sign, and then we choose if. If cell D7, which is our hours, is greater than 40. That's what we're looking at. That is our conditional clause, our statement. Is D7 greater than 40? Because if it is, then they have overtime hours. And if it's not, then they have 0. So here's our conditional statement, followed by a comma. So the next thing should be our true answer. So if D7 is greater than 40, then we were told to take D7 and subtract 40 from that to find out how much they worked over 40. Then we put a comma. Now we're finding the false statement. So if they didn't work more than 40 hours, what should be in this cell? And we said that it should display 0. Notice here on this bar, it says logical test, value if true, value if false. So this should help you in completing your formula. I'm going to close the quotations, or excuse me, the parentheses up. I hit enter and I get 0 here. Why? Because this person did not work over 40 hours. If I bring it all the way down, I see that someone who did work 40 hours or more received 3.5, 3.5 here as well, and 1. So you can see that that did work, so I can go and check myself. There is one more way to do this. So let's go ahead and highlight all that information. Let's delete it. And let's look at the other way. The other way is to go to the formulas ribbon and choose the if function. Now, you could go to AutoSum and you could choose more functions. And this is going to display more options for you. We see if is there, we say okay. Logical test, this is a conditional statement. So it's D7 greater than 40. That's what we want to know. Now, it's saying false because D7 is not greater than 40, and we know that, and that's fine. But if it was true, what would we do? We would do D7 minus 40. So right now it's saying, oh, well, that would be negative 10. But if it's false, we said it should display 0. And so it's showing me that if it's false, it should display 0. So you can see it's giving you the examples on the side here to help you out. So this might be a little bit better for you. When we say, okay, we get the same answer, we fill down, and again, we get the same answers, 1, 3.5, and 3.5. That is it for if functions. If you need to watch the video again, please do. If you have any questions, email me or come and see me before or after school. Good luck. See you next time.